What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning into the channel. If you haven't already, download the Get Right Starter Kit. It's gonna have everything you need to know about getting started on creating a lifestyle of design, how to design morning and night routines, and must-do things to take your game to the next level wherever you're starting. So it's in the link in the description below, completely free. Just click on the link, download that. So this is part 2. It was supposed to be part of part 1, but I took so much notes, it's taken a bit longer than I thought. So this will be the submit to reality portion right over here. So let me just jump right in there. So submit to reality, the ideal apprenticeship. So it's the first transformation, and he kind of goes through 3 transformations through the book, and he uses Charles Darwin in the beginning. I don't want to spend too much on all of the stories, but the first stories are generally pretty important. So Charles Darwin is he was born, he actually had a first cousin, Sir Francis Galton, who was way smarter, way more looked at as being the person that was going to be the famous one, the great scientist of the generation. But long story short, what Charles Darwin, how he started off was he was very interested in like insects and bugs, and his dad was pretty prominent, and he was like not thought of as like anything. Like he was kind of a fucking weirdo and a loser, kind of scraped by school. Like his father put a lot of pressure on him to succeed, especially like with his first cousin. So they're all like very overachievers. He was kind of part of a family like that. He struggled in college a lot. He did all right in one class, and that was biology, but he really wasn't doing much. So after college and everything, he really didn't have a direction. I think he was like sweeping at like a barber shop. He was doing something like super low key, and his dad finally got him this position at the church. It was like his last ditch effort, like, let me get him into the church. He'll have a kind of like a mediocre existence. I'll get him in there, and he won't disgrace the family. So I think he actually does start doing that, but then the one class he did, like, his biology professor's like, okay, I think it's called the HMS Beagle. It's gonna be heading out to the Galapagos Islands. It's gonna be like a 7-year trip, and they need somebody on the boat to collect samples, and I think you would be great for the job. So he's like, oh yeah, word, great, perfect. Runs back to his dad. He's like, Dad, fuck the church. I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna jump on the Beagle. So his dad's like, dude, like, I don't know what you think. You're like a weird nerd. You've never been on the sea before, and you've never been away from your family for like months before. So like, I don't get where you think that you're gonna jump on a boat and be away for 7 years. Long story short, I think he gets his like uncle to help persuade them to let him go. So he does end up getting his father's blessing. His father probably more like, yeah, I know you're gonna regret it. So he gets on the boat immediately. Within the first week, he's like, this is the biggest fucking mistake. He has incredible seasickness. He doesn't really get along with the crew. He's not good at seaman work, and the captain is actually like insane and he's insane and insecure. He constantly needs people to tell him how great he is, and really all he really wants Darwin to do is to collect evidence to prove the existence of Noah's Ark. So he is totally not in his element, and if you think back to what he actually comes up with, proving Noah's Ark is like the complete opposite of what he discovers. But so he's completely miserable. He's homesick, seasick, and just kind of sick in the mind, and he can't figure out what to do. And then he's like, fuck this, I'm gonna do what I did before, like when I used to collect bugs. I'm just gonna observe, and cause like there's no way out. He's kind of on death ground. Like they're not gonna turn the boat around. Like he's in the middle of the ocean. So what he did was he just observed all of the people on the boat, and he noticed that he was doing a lot of things wrong. Like he complained a lot. None of the people complained about their work, you know. that they're very stoic. They did their jobs or whatever. They just did it and shut up. He noticed things about how to treat the captain and how he was insecure. And long story short, he ends up being able to blend in and commingle with the rest of the group. So it wasn't like he was kind of caught in that place for too long. He figured out how to do everything. By the time they hit shore, he's kind of he's very happy, and he kind of gets to work. So yeah, so he learns that way to cope and how to study. He studies like an anthropologist. By the time they hit land, he's very happy. But then he starts to notice he's seeing all of these species he's never seen before. So he has to kind of gather all this information, and all these samples. But if he doesn't learn how to categorize, he's gonna not know what to do with any of his work. So he starts to develop this intense discipline, because there's so much fucking work for him to do that he has to collect, and that's so different. He builds this discipline for himself. He also takes his explorative kind of nature, the way he used to run around and look for insects back home. He is going super deep. Like most people just stay on the shores. He's going deep into the forests. He's going and meeting with locals, and he's using those same techniques that he used on the captain and the crew. He's using those same techniques to make connections with the locals there, have them take him deeper in. He's using those same techniques to actually study the different organisms and things that he's collecting, and all the samples he's collecting, and he ends up bringing back after their stay there is finished. And honestly, everybody kind of knows where this story leads. They just probably don't know the deep story that this leads to the theory of evolution. So this is where he builds the basis of the infancy stages of his theory of evolution. It kind of like starts to spark his mind. And then really the keys to mastery on this that he discusses is that you're gonna have to take a chance and take a risk. So that was a huge risk for Darwin, to jump on a boat. And he really didn't have any idea. This was all kind of like in the ether. This was just a pipe dream. Like, who knew what was gonna happen? And when he came back, his dad remarked that like it looked like a change, man. It was like somebody like went to boot camp and came back. Like he was very serious, it completely changed him as a person. And in talking about this change as a person, what you're looking for is growth and transformation. You're not looking for the easy way out. That wasn't easy. The easy way would just take the job that his dad gave to him. So that's really like the keys to that story there. So then Robert Greene gets into just really the three kind of phases of the ideal apprenticeship. So deep observation, the passive mode; skill acquisition, which is the practice mode; and then experimentation, which is the active mode. So deep observation is a few months to a year. Skill acquisition is that 7 to 10 years. That's the 10,000 hour rule. And then the experimentation and active mode is the shortest. This is kind of the transition to the next phase, which would be the creative active phase. So it's very kind of self-explanatory. I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts. If you want to see what I write, you can get into that. That's going to be where it's going to be deeper into that. So very simply, it's like at first you kind of got to deeply observe and understand, kind of mute your colors, understand what's going on. Then and that's in the deep observation, kind of the passive mode. You're just learning. In the skill acquisition and the practice mode, you're actually practicing everything you're learning. You're trying to absorb what the master is doing and your mentor is doing in order to learn. And then the experimentation mode is when you're actually trying to start taking it all, combining it all, and then doing your own thing a little bit. Strategies. The next part is the strategies of completing the ideal apprenticeship. So the first one is that you want to value learning over money. And the big idea is that you're really, and he goes through a lot of stories, so I'm really going to cut out a lot of the stories for this one. You want to value learning over money. So really what's important is gaining skills, growth, and developing yourself. You don't want to become dependent on a fat paycheck. Number two is keep expanding your horizons. So you want to keep yourself open. You want to keep doing things that keep your mind growing, and you're doing more. And as you do this, more opportunities will flow to you. You'll meet more people. You'll be developed into new circles, and that's really the importance of the second part. So you want to keep expanding your horizons and opening your mind to the possibilities. You want to keep opening your mind to the possibilities because nobody is going to help you in your apprenticeship. This is about you and developing yourself. Next is you want to revert to a feeling of inferiority. So sometimes the biggest difficulty in learning anything is that we already have our own preconceived notions of how things are supposed to be, and this kind of fucks us up. And the story he uses is back to that Daniel Everett guy I mentioned before, and it really is all about learning a language. So I mean, if you think about kids learning languages, you know, a kid can learn 5 languages under the age of 5, no problem, if people are speaking it around them. But you have the same adult try to learn those 5 languages, it's hard because they already have their preconceived notions of how grammar should be, how the language should be, how words should start and finish, how the sounds, what sounds you can make with your mouth, and things like that. So during your apprenticeship phase, that first 5 to 10 years, you really just want to be like a child and absorb things as a sponge. You don't want to be an adult yet, so to speak, using that same metaphor. After those 10 years, then you're an adult. But like for the beginning, be a child. You're just trying to absorb everything you can. Of course, trust the process. So through the process, you know, you might not feel like you're gaining ground, but like everything is for a reason. And as long as you're taking those steps, you're learning, and you're putting in the time and the effort, your brain is wired to make those connections and make it work. And anybody who's done anything, and the physical is really the best way to describe this, is like, I know I've practiced certain like dance moves, but definitely in wrestling, certain moves that, you know, for the first 2 days or maybe even a week, I'll try a move and it feels awkward, like I don't feel like I can do it. And then I'm like, shit, and I'm practicing it over and over, keep taking the same shot. For some reason I can't get it, and then the next week all of a sudden I'm like, it's not even like a step, like I'm 20 times better at what I was doing than I was literally the day before. And it's like my brain finally was like, puts the connections together. I guess I don't even know what happened, like maybe when I sleep made the connections, and then all of a sudden it's like you know, you're recruiting all these muscles, and that's how you finish the move. And that is so you want to trust the process. As long as you keep focusing on the process, you're process oriented, eventually that end result will come out of it. Number 5 is moving toward resistance and pain. So you know, practicing and the boredom and the monotony of gaining skills is not this lovely thing. Like the story he uses here is of Bill Bradley, who's like a really tall, awkward guy who he concocts these crazy practice regimes because he's slow, he's not agile, he can't pass, he can't dribble. But by the time he became a pro, he can do all these. So there was a lot of pain and resistance in learning those movements. And kind of as I mentioned before, it's like a mix of trusting the process. And once again, these aren't all linear. These are kind of like combined and intertwined. But you know, like if you want to do something, and for example, a great one, person I really like is Drake. If you listen to his old music, he really is not that great of a singer, but he keeps pushing himself to the point now where he has a lot of singing songs. And I liked his old singing songs, but it was very raw and rough. But it's very clear he's practiced singing to hone that ability to be a way better singer than he is now. And he's moved towards that resistance. And that's really in terms of a lot of his record sales. And that's a tribute to a lot, because just straight up, that's what a lot of, like, I love his rap, but a lot of the women that I know that like Drake, they like his singing songs. So he's brought in the whole demographic just with the ability to sing, and the people that he's brought on board. It's definitely helped with his ability to help develop them, because some of them are singers and like Party Next Door and things like that, if you know who I'm talking about. But basically, you need to move towards the resistance. Like, the things you need to learn in skill acquisition is not a pleasurable process. It's fear-ridden, boredom-ridden, anxiety-ridden, but you need to fight through that pain and resistance to ultimately develop what you need to do. Number 6 is apprentice yourself in failure. And Henry Ford is the one that this one is done with. And he basically failed a bunch of times. He lost a lot of money. And honestly, I think he got 3 different loans for his for starting a car business. And in the car business back then, for all the money he took to start that was like unheard of. So he kept failing and kept tweaking what he knew he needed. So it's like, apprentice yourself in failure. Don't judge your failures too quickly. Just look at them objectively and look what you've learned and take that and build from it. So that's very important with that. So apprentice yourself in failure. That's number 6. For this next one, number 7, is combine the how and what. And he goes to this guy, Santiago Calatrava, and I'm gonna have to use a little bit of his story just to kind of explain what he means by this. So Santiago Calatrava, he loved architecture and he was moving towards an architecture type of path. But once he started to do architecture, he started to realize that there was more that went into building a building. There was, and that a lot of the more was the engineering portion. So and he never really kind of, he does describe it, but I mean I might have it backwards, but it doesn't make a difference. So if the what is the architecture, so what you're building is the building and how it and what's going to be designed, how is it actually going to come to fruition? How much did the materials cost? How are we actually going to build it? How are things going to be structurally sound? How can we actually make this and pull this off? So he spent like 5 years or 7 or 10 years doing all this architecture shit. Before he even really gets into his career, he goes and redoes a whole career in engineering. And that was because he wanted to not just know the surface level. He wanted to know the depth and the surface level. So he knew both and was able to combine both to create some very novel creations. And one of the biggest things he created was, in architecture, there was this idea and this kind of sacred cow that architecture is all about stability and things can't move. And he started to make moving architecture, and that was a very revolutionary idea. And he was only able to break that because he knew the engineering behind it. He knew how the materials you can use and how the ground might need to be and how you might need to structure it for things to weigh. There was no gap in his knowledge to really know the full scope. Most people that were doing architecture didn't know the engineering, so it's like everything needs to be stable in order for the engineers to engineer it and make it work. For him, he used both of those minds and combined the how and the what to actually be able to really create what he got out of his apprenticeship. So in his apprenticeship, he learned the how and the what and combined it. So when he was actually producing things in that experimentation phase or the later creative active phase, he had all that knowledge to perform and execute. The last one is number 8. So advance through trial and error. So that's Paul Graham is the story he used. But I'll kind of just explain it without really using much of the story. But he does say it fits most of our time. And what he did create is he has the company Y Combinator, where he like mentors tech startups. And he was one of the first people. He created BioWeb, which I think he sold to Yahoo, which was one of the first like business marketplaces online. And basically he just tried a lot of different things. Like, I know he when he was in school, he was in talented gifted program, so he messed around with this IBM computer at the school, and it helped get him a grant and a scholarship to Cornell. He went to Cornell, but he took all different random types of courses. He took art, history. He just took what he loved and he followed it. I know later in the book, I don't think he explained it here, he goes to some consulting gig, but basically he just kind of like kept running up paths, and then, okay, this is what it does. Running up a path, this is what it does. Running up a path, this is what it does. Oh, Netscape says that business is going to be online. Why don't I try to do this? And then eventually when he heard that thing, that's how he creates BioWeb. And this is the most suited to our times, especially with all the knowledge out there. Like, you don't have to, you can get so much knowledge at your fingertips these days that you can just start and stop, not start and stop, I don't want to say it like that. You can just do it and fail and recalibrate, do it and fail and recalibrate, and trial and error, and until you find something that does work. Really, what you can do to become a master, and going back to like combining that great niche and finding your life's task, you can develop so many skills nowadays. It's so much easier that you can combine all these things together and kind of create a new renaissance period. So that's really is the completion of submitting to reality the ideal apprenticeship. In the next video, I'm going to try to get 3 and 4 together, but I might have to just split them apart. This is taking a little bit longer, and I don't want to jip you guys on the content. So if you haven't already, download the Get Right Starter Kit. It's going to show you how to start creating a lifestyle of design, how to create morning and night routines for success, and how to really take your game to the next level. Some must-do things to take your game to the next level. And it's completely free. Just hit the link below and you'll get that. If you like the content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave some comments below. Dislike it if you don't like it. I like any feedback I can get. And until next time, you know what it is. It's your boy Devin Coates. Peace.